Welcome back to the show. You are listening to Reformed Thinking.
It is good to be back in the studio.
Today, we are doing something that I think is going to be really special for the learner out there. We're taking a massive stack of resources, commentaries, sermons, theological essays, the whole thing, and we are aiming to break them all down to find the absolute theological core. And we're looking at a text that I think a lot of people know, or at least they think they know.
From Sunday school, you mean?
Yeah, the flannel graph favorites. That's it. But we're going to look at it through a very specific lens. We're both Protestant Christians. We hold to Reformed theology. We adhere to the Westminster Confession.
We certainly do. It's the framework that helps make sense of what can feel like chaos sometimes.
So we aren't just reading this as a nice story. We're reading it as theology. The text for today's deep dive is Genesis 25, verses 19 through 26.
The birth of Jacob and Esau.
The birth of Jacob and Esau. But here's the hook, and this is what grabbed me right away in the reading. We live in a world, and frankly, you see this in the church culture too, that tells us we are the captains of our own souls.
Oh, absolutely.
You write your own destiny. If you want it, you just, manifest it.
That is the modern mantra, isn't it?
Yeah.
Autonomy is the idol of the age.
And then you open this text and you are just hit with this completely countercultural reality. I mean, you have a barren womb. You have a 20-year wait where manifesting, it clearly doesn't work. You have a war, a literal war, happening inside a mother before the kids are even born. And then, and this is the most shocking part, you have a God who decides the future of these two nations before they take a single breath.
It's jarring. It completely flips our whole understanding of how the world works. It moves the center of gravity from man back to God.
So that's our mission today. We want to strip away the cartoon version of two brothers fighting over some soup and really get to the heart of what this text teaches about unconditional election and God's sovereignty over our own inability.
Which is really the core of the passage. If you miss that, I think you miss the gospel and the story.
Let's jump in then. The sources make a big deal about the context here.
Yeah.
They all talk about this being a quiet transition in redemptive history. What does that mean?
To see that, you really have to look at how the book of Genesis is built. It isn't just a random stream of consciousness,
Right.
It is structured by a very specific repeating phrase. These are the generations of. In Hebrew, it's the toledot.
The toledot formula. Okay, break that down for us.
So it happens 10 times in Genesis. It's a structural marker. Think of it like a curtain dropping on one act of a play and rising on the next.
Or like the camera angle shifting in a movie.
That's a great way to put it. So in Genesis 25, verse 19, it says, these are the generations of Isaac. The camera has officially moved off Abraham. Abraham is dead.
And that raises a huge question, doesn't it? Because Abraham was the guy. He was the charismatic leader. He was the visionary, the one who heard the voice from the stars.
He was the patriarch.
So if he's dead, does the covenant die with him? Is the whole project over?
That is the question the text is answering. And the answer is a loud, resounding no. The text immediately anchors Isaac to Abraham. It says, Abraham fathered Isaac. It's reminding us that the promise isn't carried by a personality cult.
Right. It's not about the superstar leader.
No. It's carried by God's faithfulness to a line, to a promise.
It's interesting you say that because the setting here feels so ordinary. I think that's what stood out to me in the notes. You expect, fireworks for the next chapter of redemption, but you just get a wedding announcement.
It is mundane, isn't it? Verse 20 just gives us the stats. Isaac was 40 years old. He married Rebekah. It gives us her lineage daughter of Bethuel the Aramean, sister of Laban.
Laban. Now, for anyone who knows the rest of Genesis, that name should trigger some alarm bells.
Oh, absolutely. That is a narrative breadcrumb. The author is planting a seed there.
Laban is going to be the bane of Jacob's existence later on.
For sure. But here he's just an uncle. But the point of all these details, the age, the geography of Padan Aram, is to ground this story in history. This isn't a myth. This isn't once upon a time in a magical land far, far away.
This is real geography, real people, real history.
And from a Reformed perspective, this ordinariness is actually really significant, right? Because it shows how God usually works. We want the lightning bolts. We want the burning bush every day.
But God gives us marriage licenses.
He does. The Westminster Confession calls this secondary causes. God is the first cause. He decrees everything that comes to pass. But he administers his covenant of grace through families, through history, through biology.
So he doesn't just, zap the Messiah into existence out of thin air.
No. He uses a husband and a wife. He uses the messy, ordinary stuff of life to bring about his extraordinary plan.
Okay, so we have this transition. Isaac is the new patriarch. He's 40. He's married to a woman from the right family line. Everything looks great.
The line of promise is secure. The system works.
And then the crisis hits. The system breaks.
Immediately.
The threat motif, as the commentators call it.
Yep, verse 21. Because she was barren.
It's just 4 words in the ESV, but it stops the story cold.
It absolutely does. And if you've been reading Genesis up to this point, you are having some serious deja vu.
Right. Sarah was barren.
And later on, Rachel will be barren.
Why does God do that? Seems like every time the promise is supposed to move forward, God hits the pause button. Is this just for dramatic tension?
It's not just drama, it is theology. In Genesis, barrenness is like a giant theological billboard. It strips the characters of any self-reliance. Think about it. God promised Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars.
Right. Innumerable. A great nation.
But if the matriarchs are barren, that promise is dead on arrival. It forces the reader, and it certainly forces the couple, to realize that they cannot produce the seed of promise by their own willpower.
You can't just hustle your way into the covenant.
You can't. And this is a picture of human inability.
Okay, there it is.
This is where we get into the doctrine of total depravity, or maybe more specifically here, our spiritual inability. Just as Rebekah cannot produce physical life in her womb by, trying really hard or being a good person, humans cannot produce spiritual life.
We're dead in trespasses and sins.
We're barren. We need a miracle of life from the outside. We need God to act.
The sources also point out something about the timeline here that I think is really easy to miss if you're just skimming the text. Isaac gets married at 40.
Yes, verse 20.
But then you jump down to verse 26, and it says Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born.
You got to do the math.
That is 20 years.
20 years of silence,
Yeah.
of waiting, of wondering.
Okay. I looked at the CDC statistics that one of our sources mentioned, just to get a modern perspective on this. They say that nowadays, if a couple tries for a year without success, that's technically considered infertility. Roughly 1 in 5 women struggle after a year, and that's a huge trial.
It is. It's a very real grief, a deep pain for so many.
But imagine 20 years in the ancient world where there was no IVF, no adoption agencies, and where your entire social value, especially as a woman, sadly, was tied to producing an heir.
And for 20 years,
Yeah.
nothing. Every single month, a reminder of failure, of emptiness.
It really highlights the severity of the trial, doesn't it? And it also highlights the patience God requires of his people. The promise is being put under pressure.
It is. This long delay proves that the covenant seed is a gift of grace, not a product of nature. If they had a baby 9 months after the wedding, they might have thought, hey, look what we did.
We're good at this. We're a fruitful plan.
Exactly. We are the architects of our dynasty. But after 20 years of tears and unanswered prayers, no. When that baby comes, they know, without a shadow of a doubt, this is from God.
So how does Isaac handle this? Because his dad, Abraham, didn't always handle this kind of waiting well. When Sarah was barren, they tried to, fix it themselves.
They did. They brought in Hagar. They tried to engineer a solution.
The pragmatic solution.
Right. God isn't moving fast enough, so let's help him out. That is the default human response to God's delay, isn't it? We try to take control.
But Isaac doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't. And this is where Isaac really shines. He often gets a bad rap as the boring patriarch, kind of stuck between Abraham and Jacob. But here, he is faithful. The text says he entreated the Lord.
Now, the sources did a deep dive on the specific Hebrew word, atar. It isn't the normal word for prayer, is it?
No, it isn't. The standard verb for prayer is palal. You see that all over the Old Testament. Atar is rare. It's only used about 20 times.
So it has a different flavor.
A very different flavor. It implies something much more intense. It's associated with the imagery of burning incense.
Oh, okay.
Think of the aroma, thick smoke rising up. It implies a sacrificial pleading, a beseeching. This wasn't Isaac just saying a quick grace before dinner, Lord, please give us a kid.
This was 20 years of agonizing.
Of sacrificial pleading, he was besieging the throne of grace on behalf of his wife.
There's a theological tension here that I want to press on, because we just said God is sovereign. God promised Abraham that this line would continue. That was a divine guarantee. So why does Isaac have to pray? I mean, if God is going to do it anyway, isn't the prayer kind of redundant?
That is the classic objection to sovereignty, isn't it? If God is sovereign, why pray? Why evangelize? Why do anything?
Yeah.
But look at the text. The sequence is vital. Isaac entreated. The Lord granted his entreaty, and Rebekah conceived.
Divine causality.
Yes, God is the one who opens the womb. Make no mistake. But he uses Isaac's prayer to do it. This is the Reformed doctrine of means. God ordains the end, the birth of Jacob and Esau. But he also ordains the means by which that end comes about.
And in this case, the means was the prayer of Isaac.
The desperate 20-year-long prayer of Isaac.
So prayer isn't overcoming God's reluctance. It's not like we're twisting his arm.
No, not at all. It's laying hold of his willingness. It's participating in his plan.
That's a great way to put it.
And it rebuts two common errors. It rebuts fatalism, which says, God will do what he wants, I'll just sit here. Isaac didn't sit there, he prayed.
And it rebuts pragmatism.
Yes, the I need to fix this myself error. Isaac didn't take a concubine. He looked to God. He used the right means.
It is a rebuke to how we often operate today. We want a strategy. We want a 5-step plan for church growth or personal growth.
We want a technique.
And this text is saying, no, get on your knees.
And stay there for 20 years if you have to.
So God answers. The Lord grants the plea. Rebekah gets pregnant. Great news. The deep dive is over. Everyone is happy.
If only it were that simple.
It's not that simple. It isn't happy at all. Verse 22 says the children struggled together within her. And again, the Hebrew here is really evocative. Ratsats. This isn't just a flutter.
No, ratsats, it means to crush, to smash, to violently jostle.
That sounds terrifying for a mother to feel that inside her.
It is. This isn't just a baby kicking. This is a cage match happening in the womb. And the text is escalating the threat. First, the threat was external. No child. Now the blessing has arrived and the threat is internal conflict.
And one of our sources points out the connection to Genesis 3.15 here, the proto-evangelium.
The first gospel promise. Back in the garden, God said there would be enmity warfare between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And here, literally inside a woman, you have two seeds at war. This is a cosmic battle playing out in a microcosm in a womb.
And poor Rebekah. She's in the middle of all this. She is the battlefield. And she asks this question that I think is just so raw, so human. If it is thus, why is this happening to me? Or some translations say, why am I like this?
It's just pastoral realism.
Yeah.
She received the gift she prayed for 2 decades pregnancy. But the gift brought pain. And it brought confusion.
And I think so many believers can relate to that. Lord, I prayed for this ministry or this spouse or this job. You gave it to me, and now it feels like it's crushing me. Why?
It just shatters the prosperity gospel idea that God's blessing always feels good and easy.
Completely. Sometimes the blessing brings the burden.
Yes.
So what does she do? She doesn't go to WebMD. She doesn't, call her friends for advice.
And she doesn't consult the local pagan fertility idols, which would have been the temptation in that culture. What do the omens say?
No, she went to inquire of the Lord.
And that is the key. She sought divine revelation to interpret her experience. And that is a huge Reformed principle. Suffering is not self-interpreting. If you just look at your pain, if you just trust your feelings, you will come to the wrong conclusion.
You need God's word to explain your reality to you.
You do. You need an outside word to make sense of the internal chaos.
And God gives her an answer. And boy, is it an answer. This brings us to the oracle in verse 23.
This is the theological centerpiece of the entire section, maybe of the whole chapter.
It is poetry, right? The structure is very deliberate. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided.
One people shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger.
The first thing to notice is the scope. 2 nations. This isn't just about 2 babies, Jacob and Esau having a sibling rivalry.
No, this is bitter. This is about Israel and Edom.
The conflict will span history. It's a national, a generational conflict being foretold.
It will. But the kicker, the line that changes everything, the line that subverts all human expectation, is the last one. The older shall serve the younger.
We have to unpack why that is so shocking, because today we might think, okay, the younger brother is more successful. It happens all the time. We love the underdog story.
We do. But in the ancient Near East, this was a violation of the cosmic order. Primogeniture, the right of the firstborn, was the law of the land. It was the gravity holding society together.
The firstborn got the double portion of the inheritance.
He became the head of the clan. He got the father's blessing. It was the structure of reality.
It was just how the world worked.
And here, God says, I am overturning it.
Why? Why disrupt the entire social order like that?
To show that he is free. To show that his covenant, his grace, is not bound by human custom or biology or birth order. He has not a predictable God who just rubber stamps human systems.
This brings us to the big doctrine, unconditional election. And you can't talk about this text without talking about Romans chapter 9.
You have to. We have to use the analogy of faith, letting Scripture interpret Scripture. The Apostle Paul looks back at this exact moment in Romans 9. And what does he say about it?
He says God made this choice before the twins were born.
And, this is the key part, though they were not yet born and had done nothing either good or bad.
That is the crucial point. It just destroys the idea of merit.
Completely.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because this is where people get tripped up. The Arminian view, or just the standard human intuitive view, is that God looked down the corridors of time. He saw that Jacob would have faith or be a better guy, and he chose him based on that foreseen faith.
That's the foreseen faith view. It tries to get God off the hook, so to speak. It makes his choice seem less arbitrary to us. But it fails on two counts. First, the text in Romans explicitly says the choice was made in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls.
So Paul is ruling out anything in the boys as the reason for the choice.
He is. It's not based on them. It's based on the one who was calling. And second, was Jacob a good guy?
I mean, no.
Not at all. He was a deceiver. His name means heel grabber or supplanter. He's a trickster. He lies to his blind, dying father later on.
He's a mess.
If God was looking down the corridors of time for moral quality, neither of these guys was a great candidate. Jacob was a snake, and Esau was a brute.
So God didn't choose Jacob because Jacob was good.
No. God chose Jacob because God is gracious. The choice was based entirely on his own purpose, his own good pleasure.
That is hard for people, I get it. It feels unfair. It feels arbitrary.
It feels unfair if you think salvation is a wage we earn. If salvation is a reward for being pickable, then yes, it would be unfair. But if the Bible is right and we are all rebels, if we are all barren spiritually, as we discussed earlier, then the fact that God chooses anyone is a miracle of mercy.
The surprise isn't that he rejected Esau. The surprise is that he chose Jacob.
That's it. So the older serving the younger isn't just a reversal of family roles. It's a reversal of how we think the universe works. We think the strong, the first, the deserving, they get the goods. God says, no, I choose the weak. I choose the second. I choose the undeserving.
And that's the pattern all through the Bible.
It is. It creates a complete dependence on God. If Esau got the blessing, everyone would just say, well, naturally, he's the firstborn and the system works. But when Jacob gets it, you have to say, this is the Lord's doing. And it is marvelous in our eyes.
So the oracle sets the theological stage. Now we get the actual birth. And the text gets very descriptive here, almost awkwardly so.
It does. The prophecy becomes visible reality.
First comes Esau, and he is a sight to behold.
He is. The text says he was red. The Hebrew is Edmoni. And he was hairy. CR, like a hairy cloak.
Or a hairy cloak. That's a lot of hair for a newborn.
It's evocative language.
Huh.
But these words are not accidental details. The narrator is loading them with meaning. Red Edmona connects him to Edom, his future nation, which means red.
And later he sells his birthright for red stew.
Right. And Hairy Sar connects him to the region of Seir, which is where the Edomites, his descendants, lived. The narrator is embedding his entire future into his physical appearance at birth.
And what does he represent? The sources call him earthy.
He is the man of the flesh. He is immediate. He's visible. He's strong. He is everything the world looks for in a leader. He looks like a firstborn. He looks like a king.
And then comes Jacob.
And he is holding on to the heel.
That is the image that just sticks with you, isn't it?
It is the defining image of his life. His name, Yaakov, sounds like the Hebrew word for heel, which is akofe. It means he grasps the heel, or idiomatically, the supplanter, the one who trips you up from behind.
So even at birth, he is contending, he is striving.
Even at birth, the struggle the oracle predicted is physically visible. Esau has the position. He came out first. But Jacob has the hold. He is grasping. It foreshadows his whole life of striving, of trying to grab the blessing for himself.
And that's the irony, isn't it? God had already promised him the blessing in the oracle. He didn't need to grab it.
That is the tragedy of Jacob's early life. He spends decades using fleshly means, deception, bargaining, scheming, to get what God had already sovereignly ordained was his.
He had the promise, but he didn't have the faith to just rest in it yet.
Not yet. He thought he had to make it happen. He thought it depended on his grip.
And then the section closes with that time marker again. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them.
It closes the loop. The 20-year wait is over. God is faithful, but he is faithful on his own timeline, not ours.
So we have walked through the text. We've seen the context, the crisis of barrenness, the prayer, the struggle, the oracle, and the birth. Now let's land the plane. What does this mean for us? Because frankly, unconditional election is heavy doctrine. How do we apply it without just getting a headache?
Well, we have to deal with the systematic and pastoral application. We can't just leave it as an intellectual exercise. It has to change how we live.
Let's start with that big tension, God's sovereignty and human responsibility, because this text has both in spades.
It absolutely has both. And Reformed theology refuses to let go of either one. We are compatibilists. We believe they work together.
Okay, explain that in the context of this story. How do we see both?
Well, God decreed the outcome. The oracle said, "The older shall serve the younger." That was fixed. It was certain. God wrote the end of the book before the characters even showed up.
Okay, that's sovereignty.
But the characters act according to their own natures, and they're responsible for their actions. Esau acts profanely. He despises his birthright later because he cares more about his belly than God's covenant.
That's his choice.
It is. And Jacob acts deceptively because he is a schemer. God uses these free, sinful actions of men to accomplish his holy decree.
Without being the author of their sin.
Precisely. God didn't make Jacob a liar. Jacob was a liar. But God, in his providence, used Jacob's sinful nature to steer history exactly where he wanted it to go. It's a mystery, but it's how the Bible presents providence. God draws straight lines with crooked sticks.
The sources also mentioned the three uses of the law as a helpful grid to apply this.
Yes, this is a classic Reformed tool. How do we use a text like this in our lives?
So walk us through that. What's the first use?
The first use of the law is a mirror. It shows us our sin and our inability. When we look at Rebekah's barrenness and the prenatal struggle, we see a picture of ourselves.
We're helpless.
We are. We cannot birth the promise. We cannot save ourselves. We need a miracle from the outside.
So it drives us to our knees. It drives us to Christ.
It does. Then there is the third use of the law. It's a guide for the believer. Now that we're Christians, how does this text teach us to live?
We live like Isaac by prayer, not by pragmatism.
Yes, and we live like Rebekah, by trusting God's revelation when life hurts and makes no sense. We don't live by demanding instant results. We don't live by relying on our social status or our birthright or what we think we deserve. We live by dependent faith.
I really like the point about comfort in election, because usually people treat the doctrine of election as a scary thing. What if I'm not chosen? What if I'm Esau?
That is looking at it from completely the wrong direction. Think about it this way. If your salvation depended on you, on your will, your works, your consistency, your ability to hold on,
I'd fail. 100%. I fail every single day. If it's up to my batting average, I'm off the team for good.
precisely. If it depends on us, we are lost. But since it depends on God's steadfast fidelity, on his choice that he made in eternity past, it is secure. God doesn't change his mind.
So if he chose Jacob before he was born, knowing full well what a mess Jacob would be,
Then he isn't going to be surprised by your messiness either.
Yeah.
His choice of you wasn't based on your performance, so your security isn't based on your performance.
that is incredibly comforting. My security is based on his promise, not my grip.
And we have to make the Christ connection here. We cannot preach the Old Testament without finding Jesus.
Yes. So where is he in this text?
Who is the true seed? Who is the true Jacob, the true chosen one?
Jesus.
Jesus is the elect of God, the beloved Son. But strangely, on the cross, he was treated like Esau.
How so?
Esau was the one rejected. Esau was the one who lost the blessing and was cast out. Jesus took the curse of Esau, the rejection, the casting out into the darkness, so that we, who were deceivers like Jacob, could receive the blessing of the firstborn.
So he becomes the rejected older brother, so we can become the chosen younger brother.
That is the gospel in the Old Testament, the great exchange. God chooses the weak things to shame the strong. He chooses a cursed cross to shame the wisdom of the world.
There's one more application point the sources hit hard on, a rebuke of modern pragmatism. We touched on this with Abraham and Hagar, but let's drive it home.
Oh, this is huge. The church today is obsessed with technique. How do we market the gospel? How do we create spiritual growth? We act like if we just get the right lights, the right music, the right programs, we can manufacture spiritual life.
We act like Abraham and Sarah. God needs our help. Let's go build a Hagar strategy.
But Genesis 25 stares us in the face and says, the womb is barren. You cannot manufacture life. Life comes only from God opening the womb. It comes from God opening the heart. All our marketing is just noise if the Spirit doesn't sovereignly move.
So our job isn't to scheme. Our job is to pray.
To entreat the Lord, to preach the word faithfully, and to trust that God will call his sheep to himself.
That takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
It takes the pressure off of us, and it puts the glory on God, which is where it belongs.
So let's summarize what we've seen today. This has been a really dense deep dive.
We started with a quiet transition. Abraham is dead. Isaac takes the stage. We hit the wall of barrenness, which is a picture of human inability. We saw the power of prayer, God's ordained means.
Then we saw the struggle suffering that needs divine interpretation. We heard the oracle God's sovereign, unconditional election, and we saw the birth, the physical foreshadowing of that spiritual reality.
The central truth through it all is that the covenant is preserved not by biology, but by theology, by God's word.
It rests on the promiser, not the performer.
Amen.
Now, before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on, and this is something to really let simmer in your mind.
What is it?
God spoke the destiny of these nations before they took their first breath. We tend to think that history shapes God's plan, that God is reacting to what world leaders do or what the economy does or what our kids do. But this text says, no, God's speech shapes history.
That changes how you watch the news.
It changes everything. And that pattern, the older shall serve the younger, it isn't just about two brothers. It is the pattern of the gospel. It is God choosing the weak to shame the strong. It is God choosing a crucified carpenter to be the King of Kings. It's the whole logic of the kingdom.
That is the paradox of grace. It always flows downhill to the lowest place.
If you want to dig deeper into this, go read Romans 9. Read it right after you read Genesis 25. Let the Bible interpret the Bible. It will open your eyes.
It's a dangerous chapter, but a good one. It will mess up your autonomy, but it might just save your soul.
Thanks for diving in with us on Reformed Thinking. We will see you next time.